All right. Again, good morning and welcome to this online session. I hope you guys had a great time. So it's now time for us to get back to our real business. So I can see there are only 13 students out of 85. So that means that it seems like you guys are not interested in attending online sessions. So we might come to a point whereby we'll need to rethink our online sessions. If students are not attending, so I'll be forced now to cancel online session and then we're gonna go back to face on Monday. Because if you guys are not willing to attend, I don't see the point. So it's better we come face to face on campus on Monday. But we're going to monitor that. And if it doesn't work for us, we'll definitely will go back to our initial way of doing things. All right, so obviously we are having class online. If we're going to have class, if it was going to be a face-to-face, I would have given you guys your script, but in this case, you're going to get your script on Wednesday when we'll be meeting face-to-face. So for those who are here, please encourage your classmates who are not present to come to class on Wednesday and collect their script. All right. Right. Guys, before we kickstart with our main agenda of this session, I wanted to let you know that I have generated a teaching evaluation. So that teaching evaluation, I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. So it's about teaching and learning, not the module evaluation. This is the teaching and learning. So the teaching and learning here is just for you to evaluate how I conduct my classes, all activity around teaching and learning. So based on your experience, your perceptions and expectations, right? So you're going to answer the questions, right? Based on specific areas that the questionnaire is structured on. So please ensure that you take. I don't think that it takes more than 10 minutes to fill in that evaluation, but it's important to us, right? So that we can see the areas where we need probably to focus more and improve the teaching and learning so that our activities can be well streamlined. So please, I invite you to complete that evaluation. And then before, I mean, it's going to help us in terms of how we can improve, where to improve, and when should we improve, right? So feel free to answer those questions. All right. So in terms of the assignment, the group assignment, um, I don't know if you guys still remember when I introduced the topic of the group assignment. You guys accepted that you wanted to create two groups yourself, not me creating the groups for you. Surprisingly enough, I received some emails of students now asking me to create groups and all that. I believe those students probably didn't attend that session where we discuss about the assignment and how to create the groups. It was a kind of, a poll that we um, undertook on that day to decide whether I should create groups for you or yourself should create groups for yourself. So we agreed on that. So that is entirely your responsibility to create your own groups. The only stream that asked me to create the groups was I think the management services group. So I did so for them. So in terms of group creation, they are sorted. So please create your own groups, and I believe you'll be fine with that. And ensure that you submit also your assignment on time. If there are any clarity that you need with the assignment, please feel free to come and consult. On chapter 5, we had a session before the closing of the first term. So that session has a recorded version online on Moodle right here. So please ensure that you watch that video before the next time that we meet, whereby we're going to build up on that theory, and we're going to do some calculations in relation to the house of quality. So I encourage you guys to watch that recording before you come for class, and that is going to take place on Wednesday. So before Wednesday, if you haven't watched that recordings, please feel free to do so. All right, so those are the few things that I wanted to highlight before we jump into our main agenda of the day. If you also guys have questions, please feel free to unmute your mic and talk to us. So in the meantime, I'm going to share my screen, whereby I'm going to share the memo of that test. And believe you me, the test was horrible, you know. It was extremely bad. I was thinking that the test was going to be a walk in a park, but apparently it tends to be, worse as I thought. So now, I'm gonna share my entire screen is better so that everything that I'll be doing you guys can see. Um, I believe my screen is now visible on your side. So it's the memo, and afterwards I'm also trying my best to post this on Moodle so that when you guys going to receive your script, you will be able to double check or compare whatever you have written in your script against the memo. If there are any areas where probably your script was not well marked, you can still come back and then we can adjust whatever was written in your script. All right. Guys, I don't know, eh? I don't know. So that's why I think we need that teaching evaluation so that we can check things that need to be improved. Because from my side, I might think that I'm doing everything properly according to the guidelines, according to the policies, and everything is fine. But your perceptions of my teaching and learning might be different. So that's what I really want to hear from you. And based on what the feedback that I got from the script marked, believe you me, I don't know, maybe some of you are not attending classes or they don't also practice. I don't know. So those are the things that I think you guys need to highlight in that teaching and learning. If you can reflect on your own experience, that will be a great thing. Because there are students who got zeros, some zeros are there. So I don't understand how, based on the question paper, a student is able to get zero. So meaning that even simple things as simple moving average, the student is unable to, undertake such calcul or conduct such calculations. Right. So I don't know. I don't know. So you guys probably need to tell me something around that. Or maybe at the end of this revision, we can just engage on that so that you can give me probably a live feedback on probably why some of you, did very bad. But obviously, you don't have your script. I do have your marks. I'm not supposed to release them now. Once you receive your script, I'm going to release your marks to your student portal. So you will be able to see them there. All right. So in terms of instructions, I remember some student, this is on DFC, asking me questions, how many decimal places I was supposed to take and all that. I mean, those are unnecessary questions that during a test you have to, bother yourself to ask. Because everything, instruction part is for you guys to get familiar with everything that you're going to do. These are the guidelines, things that you need to take into account before you start even writing anything. Because if you write a test without instructions, I mean, it's going to be extremely difficult for me to mark, right? So we need to standardize our answers or our ways of answering the questions. So here it says, unless otherwise indicated, express your answers correctly to two decimal places. And this instruction or this line of instructions, I even stressed on this during some sessions that we had in terms of doing the exercises and all that. I stress on this. Also, this one here is a where appropriate, indicate the unit of your answer. If it's in hour, rent, whatever the unit is requested, ensure that you provide the correct unit. Even when we're doing the calculations, I try to show you how you can write the unit appropriately. But obviously, some of you just wrote their answers there. They just, left them there like that. So it was not up to me to go and provide the unit, you know, which is completely wrong. I don't know if you guys don't know or you just don't want to follow the instructions. I don't know. And here also on top, it says show all your calculations. So meaning that you guys were supposed to show me all your calculations. Don't just dump your answers there and then you think that that part of showing your calculations does not matter, right? It's part of the instructions, so you guys need to abide by that instruction. And this is still going to be applied, to our upcoming test. I mean, certain instructions, but I'm going to provide you guys with extra instructions for the upcoming assessment. Right. So let's look at the first section. So question 1.1 says that to create goods and services, all organizations perform three main functions. And now the question tells you identify and describe each of the three functions. Use the bullet point form to answer the question. So I say use the bullet point form here to answer the question. It's much easier for me to mark your script when your answers are displayed this way, right? So you have first bullet, you put the first function, and with this, we discuss this. You cannot tell me that you don't know unless you didn't read, you didn't attend classes. This will discuss the three main functions of a given company, right? Where you have marketing, production, operation, or you can also say probably manufacturing. Some of you said manufacturing, which is good, and finance or accounting. Even if you just say accounting is still fine, you just say finance is still fine. And on top of that, you just needed to provide, a brief description or explanation of each of the element here. Marketing, some of you spoke about generating the demand and all that. You were provided with the full marks. Some of you couldn't even say anything. They just say marketing, and I gave them the mark for marketing. Explanation, they didn't say anything. I didn't give them the mark. Simple as that. So production, you also needed to say something there. I know this is just the memo. I'm not saying that what is here, this explanation must reflect, or the explanation that you provided in your script must reflect this exact explanation that is here. No, it's up to you on how you understand the concept and the kind of wording that you use also to explain the concept, right? If it aligned with the concept, I give you the marks. But this is just the guidelines in terms of marking. But the answers that you provide, or the explanation that you guys provided, somehow is different compared to this one, but it's all linked to a single concept. So financing, all about money, right? So some of you also got this right, 6 marks out of 6. And some of you also couldn't even answer this question. They start telling me about um, uh, um, a time series, start telling me about economic forecasting, technological forecasting, demand forecasting. They start telling me about those things, which is not true according to what the question is asking us to provide, right? So that's what you needed to provide for this question, and then you get 6 marks, straightforward. And I remember most of you, in terms of marketing here, they just said um, generate the demand, generate the demand. Most of you generate the demand, generate the demand, generate the demand. They didn't even say anything else, only generate the demand, generate the demand. I don't know if that was copied somewhere or what, I don't know. But anyway, I gave you guys the full marks there for those who wrote that statement. Right. So moving on to 1.2. So 1.2 says that operations management involves managing the creation of goods or services by transforming input into output, right? Providing the definition so that you can get, the context. They identify the input and output during the transformation process for the following scenarios. So it was now you are now, it's a kind of application, right? The application of the definition or the description. So here you have two scenarios. Okay, it's the scenarios with two facets. So production of a cheeseburger, and you have the production of a flavor for food and beverages. I'm telling you, the kind of answers that I saw here, it was quite funny at the same time, but sad as well. So here, when you are talking about production of a cheeseburger, so you are asked to provide the input and the output. Obviously here, a cheeseburger, that is already your output. This is what they want to produce, right? Cheeseburger, this is your output. So you can see the question is asking you to provide the input and the output, but you already in that same question or the scenario, the output is already provided. So you just need to identify the output. So if you say the output is cheeseburger or cheese and burgers, it's fine. I'll give you guys the full marks there. That is the only output. Now, input, there are different input. I tried to list, some of them here, right? So in the question, it's not like I wanted you guys to list everything, but you just needed to list because it was just 1 mark. Can list one. Even if you listed one, I gave you guys the full marks. So some of you said cheese, ham, lettuce, tomatoes, sauce, And some of you also said labor. Labor is the universal or the generic input that you can provide. You will never go wrong with labor. So you can see, even if you said labor, I was gonna give you the full mark. And even if in the second scenario, production of flavor of for food and beverages. So food and beverages, you know that is already your output. So meaning that your input, you can still repeat labor, right? You will never go wrong with labor. But now, if you know that food and beverage is all about drinking, so the kind of chemicals that they use in order to, get the drink, you can play around with that. So I provided some examples here or some input here. And some of you also spoke about alcohol, things like that. And what was so funny here in some scripts, not all of them, in a few, I remember one student says that, okay, say that cheeseburger, that was the output, and then the input here, I think the student said, um, maybe salt, maybe salt. So, I mean, if you are writing your answer, it's your answer. You can't just, you must be sure whether it's salt or there is no salt. And the student wrote there, maybe salt. So now, if you say maybe salt, what should I do? What should I say there? Must I come and confirm, yes, it's salt or it's not salt? If you want to write salt, write salt. But if you say maybe salt, I mean, I don't get it, you know? So, yeah, that's what you needed to. It was just the application of the formula, right? See where how you can identify the input and also how you can identify the input. So simple things, straightforward, but that's what I thought. But apparently, these things were not simple. They were difficult for some students. So let's move on to 1.3. It says that a product's life cycle is the time when a product is introduced to the market until it's removed from the shelves. Now it says that identify the stages or phases of a product life cycle and provide a concrete example for each stage or phase. And again, for marking purposes, just to ensure that I don't get lost in your answers, I mentioned that you should use the bullet form. So the bullet form makes things easier in terms of marking, right? So here it was out of 4 marks as the previous question here. So obviously identifying the 4 how do you call it? The 4 stages, um, I thought it was going to be easy, right? Whereby you have the introduction, growth phase, maturity phase, and decline. And we discussed these phases in class. If you check even your slide, you will find these phases. Now, um, during the test, some of you found it quite difficult to come up with these similar terms, right? Whereby when you talk about the growth phase, I remember some students saying that growth phase, I think, is the boom. Talking about the boom phase, I think something like that. The boom phase. I don't know if they say the boom phase is for growth phase or maturity phase. I don't remember exactly, but they spoke about boom phase. So I gave them the full mark for identifying. I mean, it was half of a mark identifying that a stage, talking about the boom phase. Okay, I understand because sometimes for you to pick up the correct or the exact terminology, it's a problem. But if you can provide an alternative that is linked to what we already know, it's fine. I give you the full marks. So guys, please give me a few, just 2 minutes. Let me answer this call. Just a few minutes, please. All right. Thank you for your patience. Um, so I believe that you guys can hear me. Please let me know if you cannot hear me. Right. So yeah, so you have the four phases here: introduction, growth phase, maturity phase, and decline phase. So by providing identifying the phase, you get half of a mark, and providing the example, you get half of a mark. So that is a total of 1 mark per line, right? So here there are different examples that you could have come up with, right? And I remember in class, I even told you guys, um, I mentioned this that this question was going to come, right, while I was explaining, right? So here you had the freedom, right? The freedom of coming up with, corresponding or concrete examples. And in the same process, I even explained that if you put, I don't know, you provide an example, it's better probably to justify why that example is linked to, let's say, the introduction phase. Why is that example linked to the growth phase? Because that is a way for you to convince the marker that what you have provided, it's exactly the right answer, right? But some of you got this correctly, right? And some of you couldn't even answer, like the introduction. Look at the driverless cars, right? These are autonomous vehicles, things like that. Reality, things like that that you could have used in order to illustrate the introduction phase. Growth phase, I mean, there are different examples. I still remember some of you provided about they speak about what Apple Watch. I try to give them because between the introduction phase and the growth phase, you can play around there depending on the product, right? Some of you also spoke about the association between Uber and Spotify in terms of Uber using the music inside their car from the Spotify platform, right? You know, interesting example. Maturity provided laptops and spoke about iPhones. I don't know, 13 or 14. So they provided a lot of, some of you provided a lot of examples there, which was also interesting. And some of you also couldn't provide anything. They didn't even answer these questions. They didn't even know the four phases of a product life cycle, right? So declining phase, they spoke about BlackBerry. I remember in class we also spoke about BlackBerry, DVD, CDs, and all those things, right? So in this question here, it was out of 4 marks, straightforward. Even some of the examples are in the textbook. So I didn't restrict you guys from providing the examples from the textbook, but usually in some questions, they will say it, you can provide the example, but do not mention the ones that are in the textbook. But I gave you guys the opportunity here to write anything relevant, whether from the textbook or from your own experience or understanding of the concept. Right, so you hear that freedom in terms of choosing the correct example. Right, moving on to section 2. So section 2 was about the productivity analysis, right? So you needed to do some calculations there in order to come up with productivity analysis, obviously based on the question asked. So now, if you guys look at this case study here, you guys are familiar with this case study. This case study, we discussed it in class. We solved this case study in class. And I don't know if you guys remember, at some point, it became even a little bit boring because we're doing like almost the same thing over and over again. And at some point, I even told you that, okay, guys, go and complete some of the, some of the calculations for specific um, input, because I could feel that it was now becoming a bit, repetitive, a bit boring. But even if I didn't tell you during that time that it was going to come in the test, and it came in the test, and believe you me, some student got zeros here. So they didn't even know where to start. They got confused. Even the way they did their calculations, it was just so embarrassing, believe you me. We say that the formula for productivity, even if you guys see, if you see probably the structure of this case study, may be different to the one that we did in class, but everything here is the same except the date here. From what we did in class, it was 2018 and 2019. I just changed the date here. I put 2023 and 2024. The rest is the same. The rest is the same. So now in this question here, it says that prepare the productivity part of the report for Mr. Dan. He probably expects some analysis of productivity input for all factors. Capital productivity, use 3 decimal places and the rest 2 decimal places, as well as multi-factor productivity, use 4 decimal places for both years with the change in productivity increase or decrease and the amount noted. So here, you should also be very careful here, because you can see below here it says, okay, even 2.1 says describe any 2 key variables for improved labor productivity that Mr. Den what has to consider. And here there was this statement, indicate the correct unit where applicable. There will be no marks allocated if incorrect or no units are indicated in your answers. Some of you didn't care about this statement, right? They didn't care. They didn't provide a unit, right? They didn't provide a unit, but the statement is clear. So if I give you 0 here, please don't come and bother me, right? The instruction is clear. So in terms of rounding off, knowing which decimal, how many decimal places to, correctly take, it's also specified here in the statement, in the question. Productivity input for all factors. Capital productivity use 3 decimal places. So meaning that when it's time for you to do the calculations for capital, you must take 3 decimal places. And it says here, and the rest take 2 decimal places. So this is linked, these 2 decimal places is linked to the initial um, instruction, where it says that otherwise indicated, you know, express your answers correctly to 2 decimal places. Now, when it says multi-factor productivity, you must use 4 decimal places. This is clearly mentioned. So when you are calculating multi-factor productivity, make sure that you express it in correctly to 4 decimal places, right? And the change in productivity, nothing is said, you take 2 decimal places. But in terms of percentage, you usually don't, we are not too strict in terms of the decimal places to take. But if you can still take them, it's fine. If you don't provide, it's still okay, as long as your percentage is correct. But that decimal part, if you didn't provide, is not really of a big deal. Right. So now, how do you solve this question? I told you that when you have a question like this, you can provide a table, but I understand some of you couldn't use the table because they think that the table is, it's a bit too small for them to provide all the demonstrations or calculations. So in this case here, if you go back to your notes and all that, you are going to see that it's the same answers, the same thing that you did in class. It came back in the test, and still people couldn't unpack the question. So first thing first, you have to identify the output, right? You say that productivity is there, is given by taking the output divided by the input. So here, from the table here, you even have all the inputs that you have: solvent, equipment, labor hour, and capital. Obviously, car served, this is the output. All right, so that's what you can see here. You see here, this is the year, and the output here is 7,500, and the input for solvent is 700. If you check the table here, it's 700. So you take 7,500 divided by 700. This is what you get, 7,500 divided by 700. And that gives us 10.71. Because here you have to take 2 decimal places, not like capital or multi-factor productivity, that you have specific instructions. Nothing is said here. You just need to abide by the initial instruction. Now, some of the things in terms of the unit, I think I explained this in class when I was demonstrating how to come up with the correct unit. You can see on top is cars served, because here is the number of cars served, right? Or even if you write cars, it's still fine. So meaning that you have 7,500 cars divided by 700 liters. So the unit will be now cars per liter. The unit should be or must be like that because on top you have cars and below you have liter. So that's going to give you cars per liter, the answer that you're going to get. So here, that's why you have here 10.71, right? Cars per liter. Okay, if you know your story, you can say liter of solvent, but you just can leave it per liter. We already know that the liter is for solvent, right? So that was 1 mark, right? So it's the same approach. We're not going to change anything here. And the interesting part is that some of you did some crazy stuff here. You see solvent here, they took this amount here, how much? A liter, a liter, a liter, a liter, yeah. They take 320, right? 320 divided by 700. That is their productivity for solvent. I don't know if there is any place or during our session that I mentioned, oh, I told you guys to do something like that. I don't remember. And I can tell you I never said anything like that. So these are the students I believe don't come to class. So they don't know what is going on. And they just pop up during the day of the test and they want to come and write the test. I mean, believe you me, if you don't attend, you don't practice, you don't know what's going on, you are coming to write the test. What do you expect at the end of the day? Obviously, you're going to write this kind of, um, put this kind of errors whereby, it's not taking you anywhere. Because I never said anything like this. And obviously, I'm going to mark you wrong because there is nothing that I'm going to do here. It's completely zero. Because we say that the output, productivity is the output, output divided by the input. So now you go and take the price just like that, and then you start telling me that that is the answer. It's not nice. So some of you couldn't find the correct unit, and I believe I deducted some marks there, so I gave you some of you 0.5. Right. So you can see the same approach that we have taken or we have followed with solvent. It's also the same with equipment and the remaining until capital. The output 7,500 and not divided by the input that is given. Here, for instance, your equipment is 21,000 hours. So just take that and use your calculator for you to come up with the correct answer. Again, you need to know what is on top and what is below so that that is going to help you in terms of providing the correct unit. Right? So cars per hour or hour rented. Now, some students, I don't know what kind of calculators they were using, and that was so unfortunate. You can see the demonstration here, the calculations are correct. However, the final answers were completely wrong. You can see a student writing like this, 7,500 divided by 700, and then the student obtained something like 0 point something, right? Obviously, the answer is wrong, but you can see that the student knows what he's or she's doing, right? So this is wrong, and I gave the answers for the demonstration because I can see the problem was with the calculator. So yeah, that's what happened. So before you go and write the test, please ensure that your calculator is functional. And I usually encourage students not to go and write a test with a new calculator that you never used before because it's going to play this kind of games and you can just be losing marks unnecessarily. Right, so that's what you do. And in terms of the multi-factor productivity, so multi-factor productivity here, meaning that you have to combine all the factors. These are the individual factors. So you have to combine all the factors. So this is where the multiplication comes in order to convert, because we have solvent expressed in rands or in liter, equipment in hour, labor in hour, capital in rand. So you have different units here. So in order for you to find a common unit and apply the formula, you have to multiply and do some conversions. So obviously the output is still the same. So 7,500 divided by all the input. So all the input here is the number of liters, but number of liters, you cannot just put it here below, right? You need to convert that into rand because capital is already in rand. So what you're going to do here, you're going to take, for instance, let's look at solvent. Looking at the table here, this is solvent. There are 700 liters. So now we want to convert this into rand so that that is going to match the capital unit. So you can see a liter of solvent here in 2023 is 320. So what you do is that you're going to take this 320 multiply by 700. And the answer that you are going to get there will be now the amount of solvent, right? That they spend on. Now, that is what you are going to use in order to apply the formula. So the same applies to equipment. Equipment here you have 21,000 hours. So you have to convert this into rand. And if you check the statement here, they have given you an option to convert this so that the cost per hour. You see, if you check nice, and then the equipment renting cost has remained the same for both years at 33. So you take 33 multiplied by 21,000, and that is the amount that you are going to use. Labor, the same thing for the 2,000 multiplied by, I think, 13, right? And that also gives you the amount. And now you can see you have everything, in one unit or common unit. Capital in rent, labor is now in rent, equipment in rent, solvent in rent. So you can add up or sum up your denominator or your denominator in order to do the calculations. So that's what we have done here. All right. So if you add solvent, labor, and all that, it will give you this amount. And on top, your numerator is the output 7,500 divided by this, and then it gives you this amount, right? And obviously here you also must be very careful with the rounding off because they say multi-factor productivity, you must take 4 decimal places. And here we have the 4 decimal places. And the unit cost per rand, because remember all these factors have been converted into rand. Therefore, your unit would be now cost per rand, or if you want to say car per rand, it's not a big deal, right? Still, you know what the unit is. Now, that is what you do for 2023. It's the same approach that you're also going to take for 2024, right? You identify the output, right? And then you identify the input of each of the factors, and then you do your calculation until you also do the same thing for the multi-factor productivity. So once you are done, now you move on to productivity change. So productivity change, you needed to know the formula, say the new minus the old divided by the old. That is the formula, right? So that's why I showed even this demonstration here. So here, this is the new, right? This is the new 2024 minus the old. The old here is 10.71 and divided by the old 10.71 times 100 because you want to have your answer expressed in percentage. So that is negative 37.72. Even if you wrote negative 37%, you were given the full marks. If not, you can come and see me and then we can adjust that. So yeah, this is what you're supposed to do for all the thing. New minus old divided by old times 100, and that would give you all these answers here. Right? Straightforward. You didn't need to bother anyone. And also, we did this in class. So this question was already in class, and I didn't see any student coming to see me, sir. Can you please check this for me? Even if we didn't finish everything completely, but no one came and consulted, you know. But unfortunately for you guys, I brought the same thing. All right. So the second part of the question, it's not supposed to be 2.1, it's supposed to be 2.2. It said describe any two key variables for improved labor productivity that Mr. Den has to consider. Right. So we're supposed to take any two. But here I listed all of them, right? So from your side, you're just supposed to take any two, just two only, right? So basic education, diet of the labor force, social overhead in terms of, transportation, accessibility to work, things like that. And then technology, the last four. I mean, the last point, right? The use of technology to enhance productivity. So, and these three are in the textbook. This last one, I'm the one who edited it because the world is evolving. Technology is also playing an important role in productivity or in production. So I added this just to give you guys more room to to decide on what to use. And again, this question was even in the case study that we did in class. And that question was, I think there was even the one that we did in class, there was an extra question about the 10 decisions of operations management. And I removed that one, the 10 decisions of operations management. So this is what you needed to provide, right? And it was 1 mark per answer. So two marks in total. Guys, if you have any questions or something is not clear, please feel free to, to ask questions so that when you receive your script, you already know what really to, double check or focus on. So the last question now. The last question or the last section is about forecasting. It's a weekly sales of a copy paper at cubicle suppliers are in the table below. Question one, compute a 4-period moving average for weeks 5, 6, and 7, and then compute a 4-week weighted moving average for week 5, 6, and 7, I mean the same period, using the following weight. So the weights are provided, right? And this was gonna give you 12 marks. And then question 3.2 say compute MAD for each forecast. So meaning that you needed to compute the mean absolute deviation for each model. Which model is more accurate? Is the question. Which model is more accurate? And then the question continues, says focus week 8 with the most accurate method or model. And I also explain this kind of, questions that you could encounter in the test. So here you can see it's better to create a table. So from a table, you can see, all the values and what need to be, considered at each level before you move on to the next level or the next period. So, yeah, this is what needed to be done. So now you have week 1 to week 7 cells. You have also the corresponding cells cases. So now here I drew a table From here, I have a table, and here I have the weeks and sales cases. And the question is saying you must calculate a 4-week moving average, a 4-week weighted moving average. And luckily enough, in this question, I didn't bring the exponential smoothing. So exponential smoothing was not here. So only the moving averages. So but when you are calculating simple moving average, guys, some of you couldn't even answer this question. So said simple moving average, say 4-period moving average. So they say week 5, 6, 7. So if you are calculating 4-week moving average and you are even given, they say that you must start populating from week 5. So that means you're going to make use of 31, 27, 21, 17. You add all these numbers here, divided by the number of period. So divided by 4. And that was going to give you the forecast of week 5. And that's what is provided here, right? 31 plus 27 plus 21 plus 17, everything divided by 4. And that gives you this forecasting. Straightforward and simple, And you move on to week 6. And week 6 is here. So week 6 meaning that you are populating this cell here. So you're going to make use of 17, 31, 27, and 21 divided again by 7. And you also do the same for week 7. You consider 17, 19, 31, and 27 divided by 4. That will give you this answer here. You see, 3 marks, straightforward without complicating the situation. And obviously, they say that you must calculate MAD. So that's why I put here straight absolute error, right? So absolute error is what? Is the actual minus the forecast, right? So this is the forecast. So you take 19 minus 24. And I have already written here absolute error. So even if it's a negative number, I'm going to write it positive because I have already said that this number must be positive. So here I have 5 and also do 17 minus 24.5. Obviously, it's going to give us a negative number. So here I write positive as an absolute value. Now 21 minus 23.5 and gives me 2.5, right? So they said calculate MAD for each of the method. So here you just need to sum up all this, right? Within the absolute error, you sum up 5 plus 7.5 plus 2.5. You sum up that, and then the sum will give you 15, right? So 15 now divided by the number of period. How many periods do we have here? That was also another issues that I believe some of you got confused there. So here you're going to count. You can see you start counting the error from here, from this period, 5, 6, 7. So the number of period will be 1, 2, 3. So 15 divided by 3, that gives us 15. So this is the mean absolute deviation for the 4-period moving average. Now, let's move on to the 4-week moving average. So 4-week moving average, you must consider the weights that are provided. So if you don't know the rule, it will be difficult for you to apply this weight correctly. So the rule says that the heaviest weight must be applied to the most recent data. That's the rule, right? So in this case here, we are populating week 5. Week 5. Over here, week 5, we are right here, week 5. So in this case here, we are going to consider this data here. So the 4 previous period, again 31, 27, 21, and 17. So we say that the heaviest weight must be applied to the most recent period. So the most recent period here is period 4 with a data of 31. So that means 31 will be multiplied by the heaviest weight. And the heaviest weight in this case here is 0.60. I think we also use similar weight in other questions. So here, 31 times 0.6. And here you have 27. 27 multiplied by 0.42. And 21 multiplied by 0.22. And lastly, 17 multiplied by 0.15, right? So this is what you have as your numerator, right? And this has to be divided by the sum of the weight. Since we are talking about the weighted moving average, we don't divide by the number of period, but now we are going to consider the weight. So divided by the sum of the weight. But if you take 0.60 plus 0.42, 0.22 plus 0.15 plus 0.60 plus 0. What's going on here? Oh, yes. I mean, you take 0.60 plus 0.42, 0.22 plus 0.15, that gives us 1.39, right? So whatever you got on top here divided by 1.39, and that gives us 26.70. So this is the correct answer or the forecasting for week 5. And again, you can see we didn't use the data for week 5. We made use of the previous period's data, right? So the same thing applies here as well. So when you are forecasting week 6, we're going to consider 19, 31, 27, and 21. We apply the weight accordingly in order to come up with these answers here, all right? So this answers here. This one, leave it aside for now, right? We only have this 3 period here, so we just answer here. Fine. Now, again, you have to calculate the absolute error. So the absolute error is going to be the actual minus the forecast. So this 19 minus 26.70, and that will allow you now to get these errors here, or the deviations or absolute deviations this side. And again, you add all this in order to come up with the sum. And here the sum gives us 14.91, and divided by the number of period. In this case here is 3, still 3. So that will give us 4.97. And this was out of 2 marks, this mean absolute deviation. Now the question says also focus week 8 with the most accurate, how do you call it? The most accurate model or method. So if you compare these two mean absolute deviations, you're going to say that this mean absolute deviation is more accurate compared to mean absolute deviation for 4-period moving average, because this one seems as the smallest, or it's smaller than 5. So in this case, you are going to focus week 8 using the 4-week weighted moving average. And that's what is done here, and gives us 20.55. So this is what you're supposed to do. But all of you, I mean, not all of you, some of you forecasted week 8 with all the period. So now tell me, which one am I going to go with? Because you didn't even, choose the one that is correct here. Even before you calculate, suppose you say, okay, the most accurate model here is 4-week moving average, and then now you can calculate, can forecast week 8. That is, it's clearer, and it makes more, it makes more sense to what you are doing, and you are also explaining the process or the procedure that you are undertaking in order to forecast week 8. Now, this is what you needed to, to provide in order to get 100%. And I think there are 2 students who got 100%. I don't think that they are in your group. I'm not quite sure. Right, 100%. So the test was out of 50 marks. Straightforward. Simple stuff. But anyway, I'm going to post this online, right? On Moodle, on Tuesday later on or Wednesday, so that when you guys get the script, you can compare whatever you have written with the memo. If there are any claims that you want to channel through, you can bring them forth, and then we're going to address them. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is what I needed to tell you this morning. Any questions? Are we all on the same page? My beautiful people. So yeah, that's what I needed to tell you. If there are no questions, please let's meet on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we're going to unpack the House of Quality, because the theory part you have already covered. So I encourage you guys to attend, because otherwise you're going to miss on a lot of things, because that will be helping us to prepare for the upcoming test, which will be an online test. And for the online test, I have also prepared a demo test that will be available this Friday. And so that you guys can prepare yourself, you can train yourself uh, with the online test, because the upcoming one will be almost, it's going to follow the same structure. So if there are also issues that while you guys are trying that demo test, if you get stuck somewhere or some questions are not presenting themselves properly, you should give me that feedback so that I can address the issue before the main test. Yeah, okay guys, thank you so much for attending, and I think I will see you when I see you. I'm out.